One of the most common phrases you hear when people talk about personal growth is, I need to find myself. Maybe you've said it. Maybe you're saying it right now. You feel stuck, maybe disconnected, unfulfilled, and somewhere deep down, you know something needs to change. So naturally, you start looking for answers. It's what we do. You start wondering who you need to become, what career you should pursue, what business you should start, even what path you should take. But what if midlife reinvention isn't really about finding yourself at all? What if it isn't about becoming someone completely different? What if it's actually about returning to parts of yourself? Parts that have been buried underneath years of responsibility, expectations, survival, and pressure. Because that's what I want to explore today. And for many people, this realization changes everything. See, most people don't wake up one morning and decide to just lose themselves. It happens gradually, almost invisibly. You don't really see it. Life starts demanding more from you. You build a career, you pay bills, you support a family, you care for aging parents, you meet deadlines, you become responsible. And all of those things matter. But over time, something interesting happens. The focus shifts from who you are to what you do. You hear that? It shifts from who you are to what you do. You become known for your roles: the provider, the employee, the manager, the spouse, the parent, the caregiver, the reliable one, the person who always handles everything. And little by little, your own wants and desires, it moves to the bottom of your list. Not because they're unimportant, but because life feels too busy, too demanding, too urgent. Years pass, then decades pass, and one day you wake up wondering, what happened to me? What happened to me? Not because your life is falling apart, but because you've become disconnected from yourself. See, many people reach midlife and realize they know how to take care of everyone else, but they no longer know how to answer a simple question: what do I actually want? For many years, survival becomes the priority, and that's understandable. When you're raising children, when you're building a career, paying a mortgage, managing responsibilities, survival often has to come first. You do what needs to be done. You keep moving, you keep producing, you keep solving problems. But eventually something changes. The kids become older. The career no longer excites you. The goals you chase no longer feel meaningful. The things that once motivated you begin losing their power. And that's when people often become confused, because from the outside, everything may look fine, but inside, something feels missing. The problem isn't necessarily that you've made bad choices. The problem is that many of those choices were made from a place of survival rather than alignment. So listen to this difference. Survival asks, what do I need to do? Alignment asks, what feels true to me? Difference. Here's another one. Survival asks, what is expected of me? While alignment asks, what do I genuinely want? See, and for many people, midlife is the first time they actually have the opportunity to seriously explore these types of questions. One of the fascinating things about midlife is that old questions begin resurfacing. Questions you might have ignored for years, questions that never completely disappeared, they're just somewhere back there. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. You find yourself asking, what do I actually enjoy? What energizes me? What makes me feel alive? What would I do if I wasn't worried about other people's expectations? What kind of life do I want moving forward? These questions, they can be uncomfortable because they often reveal how long you've been disconnected from yourself, that they're so powerful also because they point towards something important. They point toward your truth. And the longer you ignore those types of questions, the louder they tend to become. That's why so many people describe midlife as a wake up call, not because life is ending, but because life is asking you to pay attention. Pay attention. Sound the alarm. Here's something I've noticed. The answers that people are searching for often aren't completely new. Familiar, but not new. They're things they've known deep down for years. The creative person who stopped creating, the entrepreneur who never gave themselves permission to try, the teacher who loved helping others, the writer who stopped writing, the dreamer who became practical, the adventurer who became responsible. Those parts, those particular parts of you don't disappear. They simply get buried. And when people begin reconnecting with them, they often say something interesting. They say, I feel like myself again. Not I feel like a completely different person. I feel like myself again. There's a huge distinction because reinvention isn't always about adding something new. Sometimes it's about removing those layers that have covered up who you already are. The returning to yourself requires honesty, real honesty. Not the kind of honesty you give others, the kind of honesty you give yourself. Honesty about what is working and honesty about what isn't. Honesty about what you want. honesty about what you're tolerating, honesty about what you've outgrown. And that's difficult. It's difficult because honesty often forces us to confront those realities that we've been avoiding. Maybe you're no longer fulfilled by your work. Maybe you're exhausted. Maybe you're living according to someone else's definition of success. Maybe you've spent years ignoring your own needs. These truths can feel uncomfortable, but they also create freedom because you can't change what you're unwilling to acknowledge. The moment you become honest with yourself is often that same moment that transformation begins. See, one of the biggest mistakes people make during reinvention is believing they need to have everything figured out immediately. You don't. The goal is not perfection. The goal is alignment. Alignment means your choices begin reflecting who you truly are. It means your actions become more consistent with your values. It means you stop living entirely on autopilot. You start listening to yourself again. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need all the answers. You simply need to begin moving forward towards what feels authentic. Small steps, small adjustments, small moments of truth. Those are often what create the biggest changes over time. Many people think reinventions happens in a single moment, and it doesn't as well. It's a process. Uh, if you're midlife, you know the process. There's a process to so much, to everything. Things don't come quick. It's a process, a series of decisions, a series of conversations with yourself, a willingness to keep asking what feels true, what matters now, what am I being called toward? The answers will evolve. You will evolve. That's part of becoming human or being human, not becoming human. That's part of being human. The goal isn't to arrive at some final version of yourself. The goal is to remain connected to yourself as you continue growing. Every day you're becoming. So if you've been feeling lost lately, I want you to consider a different possibility. Maybe you aren't lost. Maybe you've simply become disconnected with yourself. And maybe the answer isn't finding someone new. Maybe the answer is remembering who you've been underneath the pressure, responsibility, and expectations all along. You don't need to become someone entirely different. You may simply need to reconnect with parts of yourself that you've neglected for years. Because midlife reinvention isn't always about creating a new person. Sometimes it's about finally giving yourself permission to be the person you've always been. So if you're thinking, I know something needs to change, but I don't know where to start, please download my free 15-minute reset. It's a simple exercise designed to help you quiet the noise, reconnect with yourself, and begin discovering what you truly want in your next chapter. That honesty. You'll find the link in the description below. Click on it. If this video helped you, please subscribe. Subscribe to the channel and join me every week for practical and honest conversations about finding clarity, finding confidence, and a new direction in midlife. And remember, you may not need to find yourself. You may simply need to come home to yourself. So before you go, I wanted to recommend last week's video, why midlife reinventions requires letting go of the old version of you. Because once you begin reconnecting with who you are, truly are, the next challenge is often releasing the identity you've outgrown. So click the video above to see it, and I'll see you in the next video.